So the Lewis family have finally found £100 million down the back of the sofa, so maybe the cheese room will finally become a reality. And there's more dosh to come, according to Gary of Harlow. Meanwhile, everyone's playing like everyone else these days. Long throws, they're booting it up to the big man. What happened to Seat of the Pants playing out? Is it all one big tactical copy and paste? Brennan Johnson's in the news, courtesy of Jed Spence's tasteful Instagram post. Good for team harmony, that. Then we've got Spurs players on international duty. Do we only care about them not coming back limping or with some mysterious tightness that lasts until April? We'll also discuss Spurs scapegoats down the years and who's next in the firing line. Dave Bradshaw will be bringing us his Whining Wankers XI. Kev is delving into our eternal optimism-pessimism dichotomy. And Julie's going full big match revisited. And we'll wrap up by looking ahead to Aston Villa. Right, let's get on with it. It's Nice One Cyril.
Nice One Cyril.
Right, so with me today we have artful wordsmith and Spurs historian Julie Welch, as previously mentioned, Kev here again, and genius microbiologist, yet still a Spurs fan, Dave Bradshaw. Why don't we get cracking and get straight into this Lewis family cash injection? Dave, what's that all about?
Yeah, it's very difficult. Again, one of these things very difficult to tell, isn't it? It's what does 100 million get you nowadays? Not very much, really. It gets you 1.5 Richarlisons, I guess, in modern money, which might be not quite what we need. Yeah, not sure. What does it mean? I genuinely don't know. I don't know. Is it 100 million purely for transfers? When does it come through? They structure all the deals across many years. Need to be an accountant to understand all that stuff, I think.
The implication was, certainly some of our more optimistic fans thought that, here we go, 100 million quid for players. I mean, that's the first thought, not necessarily to pay staff or to pay down interest or anything like that, whatever it is. I don't know. Who knows? But we shall see. Kev, does that fill you with excitement, or are you thinking it doesn't look like anything special?
No, because like Dave, I don't know what it means. I wonder if it was a little bit of politicking and them saying, look, we're investing in the club, we're not selling, we love you all, and I don't know what it means. And I agree, 100 million actually it's not going to transform the squad, even if it all went into the squad. So I don't know. I sort of ignored it, really.
Yeah, it didn't. It sort of sounded like a headline, but it didn't sound like anything practically advantageous. I mean, I know it's 100 million quid, but I mean, who knows what that's for? Julie, we forgot to mention, didn't we? Only because, in my view, it was a bit kind of irrelevant. But let's give it a couple of seconds. The supposed takeover by some DJ, Brandon Earwig or something. It seems now that. Was that a little bit of Brandon Earwig just bigging himself up and getting a bit of publicity? Or does it indicate that there's interest in the club? And is it just a design for the club to say, no, we're not selling to DJs or anything or anyone?
I think it's just some sort of tribal that the suitors are sort of gathering and doing their little bit. And Michael, what's his name? Brandon Earwig. What's his real name? I don't know. I mean, it seemed to me to be so absolutely ridiculous that I just didn't even kind of think about it at all. I thought, I just had memories of Michael Knighton pretending to take over Manchester United back in the day. There's always some twat there who's going to get a bit of publicity out of it. They are saying they don't want to sell.
We must get approaches all the time, and for some reason this one has come to the fore. So if we're not selling, Dave, where are we going with this? Because at the moment, we've made some good buys over the last window, but don't think we're a top, not competing to win the league, are we? It's obviously we're still in that project phase. We always seem to be in a project phase, don't we?
I kind of think we are, but I'm maybe getting a bit. I mean, obviously that's a default setting, isn't it, for Spurs fans to be slightly over optimistic and then brutally let down. But I'm getting a bit sort of jiggy with the kind of whole being slightly over optimistic front. I think we could be a top 40. I agree we're definitely not a league winning team right now, but I think with Frank, and there's so many youngsters in there, and youngsters with potential. So I know we're going to come back to some of those maybe a bit later, but I think we've got. Yeah, I mean, I think there's possibilities. I see a lot of talk about replacing Vic, which I don't know about I quite like the look of Kinski, but maybe he's not quite ready yet. But
it's become a topic really on this podcast, hasn't it, Kev? Because Vicario, I was thinking about this last week, that actually Vicario still makes world-class saves, and we've got almost to the point where we think, yeah, okay, you made 3 world-class saves, but God, you were flapping around and your distribution was shit. And maybe it's expecting too much of any goalkeeper to be perfect at everything.
Well, it is. I mean, even the whatever Pat Jennings or Gordon Banks or whoever made mistakes, but they still made very rare mistakes. And you couldn't possibly say that about Vicario. He makes far too many.
Yeah.
I think it suits him more, us not playing out from the back quite so much, because he wasn't good at that. So I don't know, I sort of think he's okay. He's okay for now. I don't think he's a league-winning goalkeeper. We do need someone else. I don't know enough about Kinski, to be honest. Sort of, when I've seen him, he looks okay, but I just don't know.
He looks a very tidy goalkeeper, and he also looks like a kid who can really distribute the ball left foot, right foot, and super confident. But going back to your mate Flappy, Julie, I don't know, there's an argument, isn't there, that, you can't possibly expect to win the league with a goalkeeper like that, because he's going to let you down more often than he's going to save you. He did make a dramatic save at the end of the Europa League final that, kind of bailed us out. But at the same time, he's the bloke who came for a cross, missed it, and left Mickey van der Ven to save us all.
Well, directly responsible for the 2 greatest moments in the match in that way. Yeah. I think he's a bit performative for me, all that performative shouting at the defence when he flings one, over his shoulder into the net. I think we've discussed before that he's meant to be one of the leaders in the dressing room, whatever that means. It probably just means he's old. He's 28 now, something like
29,
that.
29, I think, yeah.
He seemed to be okay when he first arrived. He's got worse, in my opinion. I don't know why that is, because the defence itself has got better. And now that they're not playing Ange ball, things should be sort of calmer and safer. What do you do? Is Kinski ever going to get a regular turn between the sticks, as they used to say in the days of the big match?
I wonder whether Vic was unnerved by the tactic that I think Man City started it in a League Cup match, and they started bullying him. And after that, everyone was bullying him. Dave, it seemed that from that point on, he didn't want to catch anything. He was avoiding contact. And the best thing to do, rather than get involved and push himself and thrust himself in amongst all of the heavy guys coming at him, was he's flapping, pushing it away. And that instantly creates, it unnerves the defence. It makes you feel less confident about you're the man behind you, and of course all that playing out.
That's the biggest worry, isn't it, really, is that kind of nervousness that spreads through the team. And actually, of course, as Kev referred to earlier, when we remember back to Pat, where he was catching it like an elephant with a bun, one-handed and all that sort of stuff, then there's just, well, for me, there's no comparison with anybody else before or since. And that's
I tell you, Pat's still got better hair than Vic.
Absolutely. But I did think the only thing with Vic, actually, when he first started, I thought he was amazing at like rush to gang to go back to the future. rush goalie. He would have been amazing in like five-a-side in a playground, because he was always like, seemed to be on the halfway line and
Yes,
stuff,
he was.
and making outrageous sort of interventions that looked like they were bound to go wrong. But he's a bit hazardous, isn't he? Really,
he is a little bit. Talking of Pat Jennings, right, Jennings, his voice is down here now, down here. And he's still rocking that same hairstyle from 1972, which is great. You know, the big ear flaps thing. Exactly. And it's great. Good for him.
If only.
I'm not going to listen. We always end up talking about hair, and I feel bad about that sometimes.
No, it's not the moment, or perhaps it is. But when we were going to talk about the big match, and of course, I was going to perorate on Rolf Coates' comb-over, which is kind of the best comb-over ever. You know,
do you think it was better than Bobby Charlton's?
Oh yes. I mean, once it started disintegrating, like seaweed in water, what a sight! The care he must have taken to get it all in place. I think in the Spurs biography, I described it as a kind of hair beret. You know, he would sort of wind it round and round his head, a bit turbanish almost. But it just would. Couldn't he have used glue or something like that?
Or which is what I did when this started to afflict me, was just go to Argos and buy a wall thing, and then just get the missus, every couple of weeks just to trim, and that's it. And it's very low maintenance after that.
Nothing screams insecurity and I'm bald more than a comb over. I don't know. It's like, let's draw attention to the fact that I don't like being bald. Look, we'll come on to the big match later, because I love talking about the good old Spurs days with the big sideburns and all that stuff. But let's stay with the modern era for a bit longer. Dave, we mentioned the young players, one of whom, Pape Sarr, which I'm just wondering where he fits into all of this, Frank's jigsaw right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping in a big way, because I think I've become his biggest fan. I know Julie's talked about having a kind of crushes on players or whatever in the past. And Pape is my kind of latest crush, let's say, in that way. And I know I've seen stuff on social media. It covers every blade of grass. But his game, he's absolute perpetual motion. He's unbelievable kind of stamina all the way through the games. But he seems to have added a kind of level of, maybe it was already there, but anyway, it's come to the form, or a level of little bit of extra quality that he provides as well. And then he's even getting goals. And so there's kind of nothing, what more do you want from a player, really? Never seems to complain, never gets in trouble, never does daft stuff, never gives the ball. There's very few obvious weak spots, really.
He's not going to be falling out of a pub at 3:00 in the morning.
No, exactly.
Making a fool of himself. It's interesting, Kev. We do have some good young players across the midfield right now. Simons, of course, and Bergvall, who missed from an inch, playing for Sweden the other night. But we'll forgive him that. We don't care, as long as he doesn't miss for us. And we've also got Kulusevski to come back. He's a relatively young man. Was he 24-ish, something like that. And then we've still got Maddison, more senior member of our midfield kind of firm. I'm just wondering how we're going to fit all of these players in. Where's Kulu going to play?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still not totally sure about Sarr. Just going back to Sarr for a minute, I fancy him, but I don't have a crush on him yet, if that makes sense. It's just he hasn't quite convinced me yet. And that's also true of Kulu. I think he is fantastic when he's fantastic, but I think again he never quite got the consistency. I'm hoping when he comes back he'll develop that. Maybe I'm being too critical, but I don't know. I love the idea of them all being fit and us disagreeing about who should be in midfield. I think we're going to need that. We're going to need solid, whatever it's going to be, 6, 7 possible good midfield players.
So, talking of which, Kev, actually, I saw on a little clip on Bissouma playing for Mali, appeared to get quite a nasty looking injury. on a little clip that I saw on X just about half an hour ago. So it's not been
Did
valid.
he come on and then
He came on and within, I kid you not, like within, they had a free kick or something and it got to the edge of the box. He received the ball, was breaking out with the ball. Somebody came across him, quite an innocuous looking, slightly blocking kind of challenge, possible yellow card, but it was nothing nasty. But he must have just gone over on his, not sure whether it's knee or ankle. Anyway, he didn't look great. So that's probably him out for a year or two, I would imagine.
I kind of wonder whether he's really in Frank's plans anyway.
Sure.
He's obviously pissed Frank off quite early on. And I don't know if Frank is the kind of, he's not sort of vindictive, he's not a grudge holder, but I just wonder whether Bissouma's just not in his thinking anyway. Julie, coming back to Kulusevski, I love Kulusevski because he's got a skill set that's unusual. For me, though, once you stick him out on the wing, he's not quick. Okay, so he's got great footwork, but he's not quick. He scores a few goals, but doesn't score enough goals. I don't really see him as a midfield creator, although he's a good passer of the ball. So it seems to me he's got the skills to do lots of things, but I don't know whether he's now been rendered redundant. But I wonder whether he's been superseded slightly by some of the players we've seen already this season.
Oh no, say it ain't so. I'm so love Kulusevski. I think he's a fantastic player. He really kept us in contention for so long. He's just got such a magnificent heart. He's a real fighter. I love his enthusiasm. This sort of all this sort of talk about, there isn't a position for him now and things like that. You've got to include him. Decky, he is wonderful. If we're talking about crush, I mean, he's a sort of second string crush for me, but I think he's a smashing player. Couldn't abandon him.
I'm not advocating abandoning him, but he's not going to take. If we talk about, let's say, what I don't know what our first 11 is. I'm not sure there is a first 11 because we've got too many important matches to play and you can't play the same 11 every time. But if we were having our sort of fantasy first 11, he's not replacing Kudus on the right. He's not replacing Simons in the middle at 10, or for that matter, I don't think at Maddison. I don't think he's quite got that creativity. He's not a left winger. He's not a grafter he's not a tackler and a grafter like maybe Pape or Bergvall. And I love him, but I just wonder, Dave, going back to you on this, whether he might struggle to re-establish himself.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a fair point. I guess this is something maybe we've been, to some degree, crying out for, that we would have that kind of competition. And as you say, that the mix of games will mean that he'll get his chances, but they will be somewhat restricted, or they'll be every other game and that kind of stuff, and really mix it up. I guess them they've obviously got a lot of depth. Liverpool, I don't really know that I follow them that closely to know, but they always seem to have another player that you haven't quite thought of, and I just wonder, maybe we, in that respect, maybe we are getting there a little bit, because I think a lot of teams would give Kulu a space. I think he would get into a lot of other teams.
Do you think, though, because of the changes in management that we've had for so long, we've got sort of too many players who are too different from each other to fit in to a settled unit? Because when Kulusevski and Bentancur arrived, Paratici brought them in when Conte was, they were an instant success. But since then, we've undergone so many changes of manager and changes of style. Bit of a mixed bag, isn't it? And I wonder if Maddison is going to be the same Maddison when he comes back. That's the big question, because he might not be as sound in wind and limb as he was before. So, I mean, I wouldn't count on Maddison being the force that he has been for the last few seasons.
It's a good point, and of course he'll be 30 odd by the time he does come back. I think Bentancur hasn't quite become the return to the player he was before his ACL. Let's stick with the youngsters for a second. Where I always like to have my Mikey Moore moment. They hate him in Scotland, of course, but he just scored a hat-trick for the under-19s, England under-19s. So I do think he's an absolutely brilliant finisher. Maybe we just, no one's quite found the right position for him yet. Anyway, moving on. We also have, Kev, Vuskovic, who some of us thought might hang around this season as a sort of another option at centre-back, particularly given Dragusin's injury, other ACL, I think. But he is doing spectacularly well for a rather shitty team, Hamburg, and every week we get somebody posting stats of this kid. He won 426 headers and 92 tackles and didn't lose the ball. He does look like a kid who could become something for us. But if you've got Romero and Van de Ven ahead of him, he's got to wait for, mind you, inevitably they will, but he's got to wait for one of them to go down for a significant period, hasn't he?
Yeah, and it's so difficult, isn't it, with loans? We were talking about Harry a bit last week when he was on loan and didn't look anything special at all. Mikey Moore may well turn out to be a great player for us, and Vuskovic not. I mean, it's so hard to know. I do worry about that injury thing with the centre backs. I think, it does, just one of them goes, then we're potentially in a bit of trouble.
I love Manso. He's just so solid.
Yeah,
great name as well. I don't know that he's actually ever so good, but he looks great. He looks.
He's so good when they bring him when Frank brings him on at the last 10 minutes to shore up the defence. I find him so reassuring.
Yeah,
it's I don't know why it's yeah.
Well, it kind of bespeaks a manager who's pragmatic, doesn't it? For a start, I mean, Danto's a very competent player, and it's our guy saying, right, that's it, we've done enough.
Yep.
We're confident that with this extra guy shoring things up at the back, we don't have to worry. And it gives you that sense of, unusually for Spurs, a sort of, I was going to say security, false security, but there is some sense of that. Let's move on. I'm not sure who to ask about this. Maybe Julie. Our mate Jed Spence. Now we've bigged him up on this pod many times because he's his redemption arc is quite spectacular. Although some people, like my good self, always thought he was going to be a great player, but probably not at Spurs. But there we are. He's come good. Now playing for England, and Kev and I weren't really watching this match. We sent each other notes saying we're resolutely not watching this shit. But I have to say I did watch a little bit of it, and Jed didn't make one mistake. And one of the reasons for that is that his direct opponent was one Brennan Johnson, and he had him in his pocket. And of course, Jed, with his usual elegance and subtlety, stuck an Instagram post up showing him having Brennan by a chain around his neck. That's good for team morale, isn't it? That sort of thing.
I had a total sense of humour failure over it. I thought it was terrible. I mean, when I talk about it, I sound like my headmistress. Very poor form. What a stupid thing to do, to post that on social media. I wonder if, well, it's the kind of thing that is always called banter, but of course banter is bullying. And I wonder if Brennan is actually the kind of player who gets bullied. Do you reckon?
I don't know. Listening to Brennan speak, he's a bright guy. He's very articulate and doesn't. You've seen him. He chopped down Richarlison once, didn't he? Playing for Forest. I don't think he's a shrinking violet. But Dave, unless Brennan was in on this, go on there, go on, put it up there if if it's going to make you happy, Jed. Yeah. We're all on. But I don't get that sense. I just think Jed was getting one over Brennan, and poor old Brennan he just looks absolutely as though he's been scolded by this whole.
Yeah, he does, and the worry as well isn't it, that Johnson, I have a sense that he's a bit of a confidence player as well. I mean, obviously the goals he's contributed, as we've talked about before, and you guys have talked about before. But if there is some confidence there to be knocked, then that not going to help, is it?
No, it's not. It's not. I mean, I still think Brennan's comfortably our best finisher. Kev, in the scheme of things now, he looks like a guy who's going to start a Carabao match against, I don't know, I was going to say Aldershot, but they're probably not in it. But, he's going to start that kind of match. He might start a dead rubber of a, God willing, the Champions League. But he's only going to be a sub when it really matters. That's my sense. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about him before. That's, he scores. He scores goals, know, and as long as someone's doing that, I can't see someone else is doing that. I can't see a place for him or a regular starting place for him. I don't think he's good enough. I just don't. I think he's someone good to bring on as a sub. He's someone good for those sort of matches you're talking about, but he's not. I don't know. I think he's had a lot of chances. I don't think this is it's just sort of jumping to a conclusion about him. I think he's not good enough.
I don't know what he is. That's my problem with Brennan, because he's not a winger. He doesn't go herring past people. He doesn't have loads of tricks. To me, Julie, he's like an old-fashioned, he's like Gilzean. He's an inside forward, very tidy finisher who doesn't offer a huge amount elsewhere.
I wouldn't agree particularly about that. I think that Gilzean was much less limited as a player. I mean, he just ended up where he did because he did what he did so well. I don't think you could speak the name Brennan Johnson in the same breath as you could speak the name Gilzean, because Gilzean was absolutely special. You knew exactly how good he was, whereas, we're just wittering on here about is Brennan Johnson really any good? I mean, I do think Brennan Johnson is good enough, but good enough probably isn't good enough for what we're looking for if we want to be a top four side. But to use a cliche, he knows where the goal is. You got to give him that.
Yeah.
He scored some very important ones last season, didn't he? But
he did.
I don't know.
I mean, I don't see a lot of difference between him and, say, Clive Allen. Clive Allen did nothing apart from score lots of goals. Now, the difference being that Clive Allen was a forward. Hello. Something's gone off.
Sorry.
Kev, that is probably a red card, leaving your phone on.
Utterly unprofessional, and I do apologise.
Dear, oh dear. I mean, honestly, I won't. I'll have to edit that out, obviously, because that was appalling.
I think leave it in, actually, Simon. It's sort of nice and crunchy. It gives the sort of Keystone Cops aspect that we're looking for this.
You think so?
Can I point out as well that was, in fact, my ringtone is in fact Chaz and Dave.
All right, it's suddenly. Yeah, suddenly it's all coming right for you, Kev. But I don't think by design. I think that was you got lucky. So, all right, we'll leave it in. Now, moving on to we finished with Brennan, haven't we? We'll come back to Brennan another day. We had a lot of players on international duty, Dave, mostly not for England. I mean, with only Jed for England, and Harry Kane, of course, one of ours. And I still claim him, although he didn't play against Wales, of course. But you keep an eye. I mean, personally, I couldn't give a fuck about what our players do when they're on international duty, as long as they come back fit.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Actually, I watched I was with some Scottish collaborators last week, actually. So I've watched the 2 Scotland games, actually. So I watched their game against Greece and the one against Belarus. And although they were pretty bloody awful games, they were quite competitive, which is what you're missing, obviously, in general for England games. Yeah, anyway, Scotland, they won both of them, which is unbelievable. So I was... But I like you guys, I completely avoided the England-Wales, and I really did. I didn't see a breath of that at all.
No.
So no, I haven't. I didn't even see Jed's latest appearance in the Three Lions.
I get interested when we're at World Cup finals, or if it's a Euro finals, and then I'm England then, and so if one of our players is playing for the opposition, to me they're just aliens. I don't care who they are. I don't want them anywhere. I don't want them playing well against England because I'm suddenly in my England mode. But for some of these matches, these international breaks, Julie, they are infuriating. And here we are, we're scrabbling around for things to talk about. I mean, they've made a mess of our normal schedule. They're not welcome, are they?
Well, I've always welcomed them, especially when Spurs were really, really terrible, because it was 2 weeks of not having to worry about what Spurs, were doing, how richly they were failing this week. So from that point of view, it's kind of relaxation. I mean, I watched England Wales. Of course I did. I'm a patriot. And I also, I appreciate Ben Davies very much. And it gave me a chance to see Harry Kane sitting in the stands. I just watched transfixed by the sight of Harry in a jacket, scratching his beard occasionally, looking solemn, not picking
He's
his
dapper, isn't he? And he's got a sensible haircut, hasn't he?
Yes, and he isn't going bald, as far as I know. Now, reverting to the comb-over, do you think that the comb-over will ever come back as a sort of fashion item? I mean, is there somebody with a sense of humour?
I'm gonna bring it back just to annoy you. Just to annoy all.
You know what would be great, Kev, is if you grew it from your beard and dragged it all to the middle. Yeah. That could be quite a look.
My head's on the wrong way up, to be fair.
I have to say, because I'm slightly obsessed with hair and comb-overs, there was a period during which I would photograph anyone with a, like a proper 5-star comb-over, because I think they ought to be outed. Because sometimes there's something valiant and sort of courageous about going out like that. As we talked about Ralphie Coates playing football like that. I mean, he was probably only about 25 or 26.
Yes.
With his trailing kind of thing going, went for miles, didn't it? And you could imagine him at half time,
one of those starclusters that went on for light years into the.
See, that's why we've got Dave on. We've got some proper science going on here. But I could sort of imagine Coatsy at half time, he went up to the mirror and he thought, hey, that's come out a bit. I'll have to readjust that. And he plasters it all down again. And the first run after half time, it's flying off again. There's something valiant about that. We'll come back to comb-overs because I'm slightly obsessed with them. But what I do want to talk about right now is scapegoats. Now, this is something we've had a lot of scapegoats down the years, haven't we, Dave? People like, John Pratt, and who's Julie's favourite, and people like, modern times, Timo Werner, and we got Højbjerg, I think, was in amongst them. We've talked about Vicario, who I think is on the verge of becoming a scapegoat right now.
I think
he's only got. I mean, he got a lot of stick for the goal against Leeds, but I think he was unlucky. He took a deflection and it sort of hit his trailing hand.
I think you're right. I don't have the impression there are others at the minute. Are there, guys? I mean, I don't know.
I've got one. I've got one in my mind. Kev, is there anyone in the current squad you think who is or has the potential to be a scapegoat?
Going back to Brendan Johnson, I think he quite early on was one. Unfairly was one, having said I don't think he's good enough. He doesn't deserve to be a scapegoat. And I think he was. I think it was almost like the fan base sort of drew back from that and realised that was unfair. And he hasn't got the same stick since, but I think it's still a possibility. So I think he's there or thereabouts in the scapegoat front.
Julie?
I just wonder, though, if Simons might become a scapegoat at some stage. He's got that look about him that people, have huge expectations of him, and he might not match them quite. And I do wonder about that. As Højbjerg, I do love saying his name because, I sort of learned, I've worked very hard on, how to pronounce it. He was a scapegoat, and it was so unfair because I think he was great for us. Not the most talented player ever, but he was a warrior. He got us out of a lot of messes.
He did.
It's so irrational who becomes a scapegoat in a way.
I always felt with Højbjerg that he played to the very limits of his mediocrity. Do you know what I mean? He would never give less than he was capable of giving. It's just that what he was capable of giving was kind of ordinary. But
That's
I
Reminds
sorry,
me,
Julie.
no, that you. I mean, you could have been talking about John Pratt then.
Yes, I think so.
Somebody playing to the absolute level of their mediocrity. That is just that is the definition, isn't it?
am I being unfair if I brought Paul Allen into that conversation, or is
Yes.
that? Do we think Paul Allen was he was certainly a level above John Pratt for sure. Was he a level above Højbjerg? Not sure. Probably that sort of level.
I don't remember him getting a lot of stick though, Dave.
No, he worked very hard, didn't he?
Maybe
we appreciated workers maybe more those.
I've got a left field suggestion actually, and that is Bentancur, because I've heard a lot of rumbles about Bentancur around me where I sit, and I think it's that he doesn't quite do enough. For me, he's an incredibly gifted player, wonderful on the ball, and he gets around. As soon as he makes a mistake, it's unforgivable. And I think give him, cut him some slack. But I think he's in the right kind of ballpark to be one of, if not the scapegoat du jour. Kev, is he?
Yeah, I can. In fact, I feel my own desire to scapegoat him sometimes. It's sort of because he went through a period of looking really good, and consistently really good. And then, yeah, he hasn't. I mean, since I think the injury he had didn't help at all, and he hasn't been the same. I mean, I wonder whether that's a sort of he's actually at his real level now, or I don't know. I don't know. He would not be top of my list to be, in the starting 11 at all.
So Chris Waddle, back in the day, I used to go to away games. Chris Waddle used to get some stick. Now he wasn't quite a scapegoat. Well, I think because there's something about players. I think Bentancur might be in that where he looks a bit casual. And it's almost that kind of looking a bit casual that invites the scapegoat. And I think Julie might well be right about Simons as well in that respect, because it looks like it comes easy when it's obviously not easy what they're doing. And then people, it doesn't quite work. Obviously, that Rabona thing that Simons did the other week where everybody got really mad with him. And you're thinking, well, come on. I mean, kind of what he's there for, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. From what we've seen of Simons, it would break my heart if they got on his back very early, because he's brought something that I just love. It's magic. It's a little bit of magic, to those little flip ups and putting people in, and he's seeing things that other people don't see. And inevitably, some of that stuff doesn't come off. It just doesn't come off. But without it, we're just a bunch of runners. So I love the guy. Let's move on from scapegoats. I'm sure we'll come back to that because we're Spurs fans. We like scapegoating people. Kev, this is something we tried to deal with throughout 3 pods ago. I forgot as host, and that's on me. Optimism, pessimism, the eternal kind of dichotomy for the Spurs fan. Your thoughts on that?
I don't know. It first came up for me this season anyway, just before the Wolves match, when I realised I was meeting my daughter. We were going to the pub. We had a burger. I've never been so positive going to a match. And at the same time, one of the other voices in my head was saying, "Don't be stupid. Don't be stupid. It's Wolves. It's Wolves. What's likely to happen?" And just that endless, I think, I don't know, I can't prove this scientifically. I think that optimism, pessimism thing is stronger for Tottenham fans than it is for any other group of fans. That sort of I would so much prefer it if I could maintain this sort of door pessimism, but I can't. And even
Are we blaming Kev for that performance, to be fair? Your optimism brief. Is that to blame?
I sort of blame myself. I think that's part of the whole dynamic, actually. I sort of feel if only I was just miserable going to every match, but I'm not. I want to be, but I can't.
I actually think you're more optimistic than me by nature, Kev. You are, because sometimes if we're 4-0 up, it doesn't happen very often, but then I'll send you a WhatsApp and say, have we won this yet? And you'll go, yeah, I think so. Whereas I'll go, I don't know. There's still 10 minutes to go. That's the sort of the micro pessimism, isn't it, Julie? We're 4-0 up with 5 minutes to go, and can we hold on? Can we hold on?
Is it safe to feel happy yet? I get that a lot. 3-0 up, don't be optimistic. Anything can happen. 4-0, you're getting there. I mean, I miss the days when, there were clubs like Bolton and Wigan in the Prem, because, at least then you might get a sort of 9-1 or 8-1 or something like that. So that by the time you got to, 6 or 7, you think, well, I can stop worrying now.
Yeah.
But I mean, there is a tradition that the 3-2 is the kind of archetypal Spurs score. It could go either way. You either win 3-2 or you lose 3-2. It's terrible, really, isn't it? It's so watching Spurs. It's not a matter of optimism or pessimism for me. It's just sheer stress, sheer bloody stress. Going to the game, I'm worried about it. During the game, my heart rate's about 280. My blood pressure, God knows what it is. It's just it's so unpleasant. I don't know why I do it. Why do I support Spurs? Because it is just hellish. It really is.
It really is. It really. I've become a bad watcher now. If we're winning a match on TV, I'm worse with it when I'm watching on TV, and we're sort of, we just like the Leeds match. I had to stop watching.
Yeah,
when it came.
There's a Schrodinger's sort of like the act of observation or the act of being optimistic will induce the disaster, and the act of the sort of self-sacrifice, like Kev said, of feeling completely pessimistic will almost get you over the line, but you'll be entirely miserable getting there. It's just there's something to this.
This is something we'll come back to, because it's an interesting state of being, isn't it, for all us suffering Spurs fans. One last thing I wanted to do before we go on to talk quickly about the upcoming Villa match. Kev, you sent me a lovely note this week because I was asking you for things you wanted to talk about, and it came back. You came back with your Whining Wankers 11, which is right up my alley. Tell me a bit about that.
Was that Dave?
Sorry, not Kev. Yeah. Let's start that again. So, Dave, Kevin was looking at me with utter confusion. He's gone. That fella's gone. He got his hair, but he's lost his head. So let's go back to Dave. You sent me a really interesting. I wonder if I can edit that shit out. You sent me a lovely, I forgot, where are we? Email about your Whining Wankers 11, and it was always you, never Kev.
Yeah. And I'm not sure I've got an 11 for you, but I've got some really solid 3 or 4 picks that are first on the stained team sheet, if I can put it that way. So I'm going to put in, I think McGinn is Villa. I mean, it's like absolutely non-stop whining. Bruno perpetually looks like, in fact, he looks as though he's about to burst into tears almost the whole time, as far as I can see. I'm going to put Pickford in goal. Pickford's a bit of a moaner, but probably, I'm not quite sure with the keeper. It's not quite as certainty of a pick. And Gabriel Jesus, I suspect in his case, it's partly his natural sort of set of his face, and possibly that he realises he's not the Messiah, but he's just a very naughty boy, and he plays for them, obviously. And he's so that would be my kind of nominations, but I'm sure you guys will have others that might fit that too.
Julie, take us back. You going down the years. I mean, God, we've had some moaners playing for us, but generally, who would you put into that category of
I don't want
whiner?
to take any part in this because I don't want to say the W word this week, because you've got me to say it the other week. But
what about the moaning minis 11? We'll spare you having to say wanker for once.
I think, the prize winner has got to be Arteta himself, don't you think? Because nobody moans and whinges like Arteta. I know he's not a W on the field. Well, he is actually. He invades it quite often. But I can't think of any Spurs moaners at all. I really can't. Maybe that's because, it's just rose-tinted glasses in my case. Ardiles was fantastic. I mean, he wasn't a moaner, but he was a drama queen. If he wanted to get something, he would just throw a complete wobbler, and then he would turn to Steve afterwards and say, "I'm absolutely fine. I'm ice cool." But that was his ploy. So, but I think that's good, isn't it? Because we love Ardiles. He is a living saint.
Oh, Aussie, come on. Aussie's the king. Kev, what about you? Who would you add to that
Well, I've sort of,
Whining Wanker 11?
I've sort of gone off in a slightly different direction in my head, and I was just thinking about Mourinho and how he wasn't a whinger when he was first at Chelsea. He seemed to have this intelligent, I know this is just a game sort of approach to it all. And then he went off. He had his success there. He went off, had his success in Europe, came back to Chelsea and had this personality change. And he carried that over to us. And was a whinger. Conte as well was a whinger. They had reason. They definitely had reason. But it just annoyed me. And wasn't really.
No.
I mean, he slipped in a few little passive aggressive things, but he wasn't a whinger. And nor was Nuno. So I just was just thinking about managers, really, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting we're talking about Mourinho. I wonder, you're absolutely right about that. He had a kind of a cocky mien beforehand when he's winning everything. I wonder if it was something to do with as his powers waned a little bit. He would stop winning stuff, not least with us. But I mean, generally, he started getting fired. The great man. Yeah. And I wonder if that he stepped up his kind of whining in kind of, in direct correlation with his waning powers. It's interesting. I've just got one. I've got loads I could throw in here, but the one who used to really piss me off was Fletcher of Man United, Darren Fletcher, because it's anything, didn't matter what it was. A throw-in, just given that he didn't like it. He was the face just contorted into this plaintive, just injustice, the hard done to, and he'd be in the referee's face. And it's odd that he was like that, because actually, if you hear him speak, he's a very measured, intelligent guy. So it just perhaps it's
Gary Neville in that team as well.
Cool.
Yeah, Gary Neville.
Yeah.
I mean, he was trying to referee every game from
the
first whistle, wasn't it? He was.
Oh God, they were a horrible team. Now, moving on to finally Aston Villa at the weekend, Sunday at 2. I was going to say revived Aston Villa, but they're not really. They're not what they were last season. They got a win the other week, and it was a dodgy one. Julie, is this a nailed-on defeat for Spurs?
I wouldn't say that. When Ollie Watkins crashed into the upright during the England-Wales game, I did have this sort of little hope that he wouldn't be badly injured. It wouldn't be a sort of broken fibula or tibia or anything like that. But I hoped that he would be just injured enough not to be able to play us on Sunday. So he is missing the next England game. He won't be turning up against Latvia, which is, I'm a bit worried about that, because he'll have had a rest and maybe he'll be better in time for our match. So yeah, I'm not sure, because as I say, Villa are slightly resurgent at the moment. I had my hopes that it was going to be a bad season and Emery would get the boot, and there would be the ensuing chaos. But they seem to have revived, unfortunately. And memories of losing 4-1, I think it was, under Ange, not great. I just hope that Thomas won't be out clevered by Emery. So,
Kev, what are you thinking? Is this? It's one of those you think, well, we ought not to be losing to Villa. They haven't hit their stride, but that arguably nor have we. But I feel like we've started more solidly. We're certainly higher up in the table. What's your take on this match?
Yeah, see, this is the positive, negative thing again, isn't it? I'm
Yeah.
feeling right now, things are going to come together. They've been very, very slowly, 2 steps forward, 1 back. And in a match fairly soon, things are going to come together. And I'm going to predict this is when it happens. Not everything's
Okay.
sorted out, but that things are going to click. And I'm going to go, I don't know, I was going to go 3-2, actually. 3-2. Right.
3-2 it is, that Spurs scoreline. It's okay. Well, as I said, look, I think on balance you're an optimist. So okay, 3-2. Dave, how are you seeing this match?
Yeah, I'm feeling confident about this one. I think I agree with Kev. I think 2-0. I think 2-0 for Spurs.
Okay, Julie, yeah, you're
on the
coming
line.
back in on a scoreline for us?
Yeah, I'm going. We're doomed. We're doomed. I'm going to go private Fraser on this. If I say we're going to do them 4-1, then it's just going to be a disaster. So I'm going to
Yeah.
say it'll be a typical early Spurs under Frank, and they'll get one within the first 5 minutes, and then Palhinha will equalise late on after the break. How about that? There you are.
Well, that's a very specific prediction. Listen, why not? And I think it's going to be a 2-1. I think it's to be a tighter than we would like. And I can see myself leaving on 87 at 1-1, and then hoping for a cheer as I leave the ground. And that's my favourite kind of goal, because I feel like I've actually at least had some part in creating it by leaving early doors. So look, we're all thinking either we're not going to lose. That kind of seems to be the consensus, but we may not necessarily win. We shall see. Well, look, thank you to Dave Bradshaw, to Kevin Acott, and of course Julie Welch, who didn't say wanker. Which is disappointing, obviously, for all the listeners, but hopefully there's always next week, right? And thank you to all our listeners. Give us a follow on X. We are at Nice One Cyril Pod. We've got a Facebook page. We've got Instagram, whatever the hell that is. And also subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. And then that means you'll. What does that mean, David? You end up with you get a warning when we've got a new pod out, something like that, and then you're forced to listen to it by law. I think that's how it works, something like that. I don't really understand how these things work. Anyway, so that's it. So thanks for joining us this week. We'll be back next week. We'll be pondering that Aston Villa score result, I should say, and lots and lots of other stuff. See you next time. Come on, you Spurs.